begged a millionaire CEO to act as her boyfriend for just 5 minutes. You won't believe what happened next. Sarah's heart raced as she stood in front of the grand ballroom, the stark contrast of her worn sneakers against glittering marble, screaming against the lavishness surrounding her. She glanced at the crowd of elegantly dressed guests, a world away from her small diner, and swallowed hard. Her father's death had unveiled not just a family she barely knew, but the broken remnants of a dream, a once thriving family business now reduced to debts and dusty memories. And here she was, desperate. Could a moment with a CEO really change her fate? Her breath hitched. The thought of appearing like a fraud gnawed at her. What would these upper-crust attendees think if they knew her struggles? But if she didn't act fast, all could be lost. With her daughter's future hanging in the balance and the burden of her family's legacy weighing on her shoulders, she sighed and squared her shoulders. Her dreams of a better life for her little girl whispered to take this risk. "You can't let fear hold you back," she muttered under her breath. As she scanned the room, her gaze landed on Eric, the suave CEO whose success was almost legendary. The prospect of asking him to pose as her boyfriend felt absurd, yet the glimmer of hope ignited her determination. It wasn't just about protection from judgment, it was an investment in her family's crumbling history. "What if this isn't enough?" whispered doubt, tugging at her confidence. But she forced herself to step forward, heart pounding in her throat. 5 minutes, she thought repeatedly, as if repeating the mantra would give her courage. As she approached him, her mind swirled with questions. Would he laugh? Turn her away? The pressure in her chest tightened like a vice. She barely registered her own voice as the words spilled out. "I need your help. Just for a few minutes, allow me to introduce you as my boyfriend." His surprise flickered in his blue eyes. Before she could reconsider, he agreed, flashing a lopsided grin that stirred something in her. As they posed, lights flashed around them, capturing the fleeting moment. Just when she thought this could turn her life around, a commotion erupted nearby. The chatter shifted as whispers of scandal ricocheted through the air, an abrupt reminder of the fickleness of wealth and status. Heart racing, she wondered if their posed smiles would shatter under the weight of reality. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. With each passing second, tension mounted. The exuberance of the gala felt distant as Eric absorbed her story, his expressions shifting from bemusement to intrigue. As he opened to her plight, everything she cherished began to intertwine with the chaos of his world. Was he a potential ally, or just another weight against her aspirations? The residual anguish from her father's legacy clashed with the fear of vulnerability and disappointment. Could she trust him to help her reclaim her family's future? The world around them faded, leaving only the pulsing heart of possibility and uncertainty. Every word between them deepened the fissures of their realities. Sarah felt her resolve building against a backdrop of shadowy doubts. Could he abandon his powerful empire for her dream? Both stood at a precipice filled with unseen consequences. As the laughter and judgment cascaded around them, the real question lingered. Would he rise above his world to transform hers, or let it tear them apart, leaving her stranded in a life she fought so hard to escape? The noise from the gala whirled around Sarah like a storm, each laugh and clink of champagne glasses magnifying her insecurities. In this shimmering world, her faded sneakers felt like an anchor, a constant reminder of who she was and who she desperately wished to become. Eric stood beside her, the contrast between their realities stark. He exuded confidence, a man at ease within the elite, while she continued to battle internal chaos that threatened to unravel everything.
But as she looked into his blue eyes, something shifted. The acceptance she saw sparked a glimmer of hope that perhaps he saw beyond her frayed edges. Sarah realized in that moment this wasn't just about presenting an image. It was about finding someone who might understand her struggle. Yet even amid the flurry of glamour, a nagging question hounded her. Who exactly was she, if not her father's legacy and the diner? With a forced smile, she asked, "What made you agree to help?" Eric's brow furrowed slightly, a flicker of seriousness crossing his features as he replied, "Because I recognize tenacity when I see it. Your story, it pulls you to me." Tenacity. The word struck a chord deep within her. Had she been tenacity? Did mere survival in the diner reflect that spirit, or was it merely an act of desperation? The event's glitter dimmed against the vibrant sparks of realization ignited by Eric's words. Maybe it was time to cultivate that tenacity. Not just survive, but thrive. Maybe she could change the narrative, rewrite the story of her family's diner, reshape the dreams she once held so tightly. She felt a surge of determination as the crowd swirled around them. The 5 minutes stretched into infinite possibilities. If you're willing to help, we could brainstorm ideas. I'm sure there are ways you and I could engage effectively. I need a plan, and not just
a facade. Eric regarded her carefully, measuring her intention. Are you willing to put in the work it takes to bring your ideas into reality? His question challenged her. Suddenly, the thought of standing still felt more unbearable than the fear of failing. The weight of her father's legacy began to morph into a force propelling her forward. I can build something more from the ashes," she asserted, the conviction in her voice startling her. They spoke, ideas trading hands like currency. Sarah painted sketches of her visions, how she could revitalize the diner, garnish it with community events, perhaps even offer cooking classes, turning her father's culinary passions into a thriving business once more. Eric listened, genuinely intrigued. With each concept discussed, a fresh sense of empowerment surged within her. Collaborative energy hummed, diminishing the tremors of her doubt. It was here, amidst the opulence of a glamorous life, that she envisioned her future, rich with potential instead of drudgery. But even as she reveled in the warmth of determination, ghosts of her past lingered. The specter of her father's failure loomed larger. What if she couldn't overcome that legacy? Each plan carried implicit risks, harsh reminders that success wasn't defined by grand gestures, but rather small, courageous acts taken amidst significant fear. "Are you ready for the brainchild of your dreams to possibly crash?" Eric countered, a playful challenge dancing behind his careful demeanor. A chill coursed through her at the prospect. But as courage gripped her heart, she realized failure might be the very catalyst for growth she needed. "The time has come to rise stronger than I was before," she declared. Eric's approving smile ignited a flicker of courage within her she didn't know existed. But what was this new beginning she craved worth if it all led to the same familiar downfall? The fear coiling tightly around her heart warned her. But in contrast, excitement coursed through her veins. As their conversation deepened, the crowd buzzed around them, but uncertainty whispered from the shadows, clutching her mind like a vice. Would determination be enough to muster the courage she needed to break free? The question hovered in the air, tinged with hope and dread. Something vital lay ahead. The line between courage and fear was thinner than she ever imagined. What choice would she make when the moment arrived? Suddenly, the fabric of her thoughts unraveled as a sudden uproar spread through the crowd, signaling trouble on the horizon. The celebration was about to be interrupted, but it was not only the gala at stake. Would this be the moment that defined her future?
The sudden commotion pulled Sarah from her reverie, a wave of anxiety washing over her. Voices surged like crashing waves, rising above the muted thrumming of the gallows music. She twisted toward the disturbance, her heart racing. Eric noticed and instinctively stepped closer, offering a protective barrier against the chaos. "What's happening?" she asked, her pulse echoing in her ears. Eric's gaze
Sharpened, scanning the room. "Let's find out." They moved together, weaving through the sea of silk dresses, each step amplifying Sarah's internal trembling. The air thickened with apprehension. As they approached the source of the uproar, the glint of flashbulbs burst like fireworks. A small group of reporters had cornered a slender figure draped in shimmering gold, the kind of dress that took center stage. Sarah recognized her, the new social media influencer making waves across every digital platform. With each response she gave, the crowd intensified, hungry for insight, poised on the edge of scandal and exclusivity. "Can you keep your lavish lifestyle secret, or is it an open invitation for others to critique?" one journalist shouted, his voice piercing. And there it was, an ever-present specter of judgment that haunted many, from social climbers to diligent workers. As Sarah absorbed the weight of the moment, something inside her began to spiral. Who was she to navigate this world? Would a mere encounter with failure paint her something akin to that glittering facade, ready to be dissected? Eric noticed her hesitation, concern knitting his brows. "Focus on what interests you," he whispered, his voice barely a murmur. "You want to break free? Use this noise. How could you reshape it into something of your own?" She faltered at his words. Ideas flared, each one flickering with promise and fear. The chaos around her was, in its essence, a living metaphor for her life, unpredictable, intimidating, yet full of raw potential. What if she took this moment of disarray and turned it into a platform? She could launch her diner, reinvent it as a captivating experience, a juxtaposition of nostalgia and modern culinary art. But vulnerability lurked beneath her resolve. What if the storm only revealed her inadequacies? Each name slipped into her mind, each judgment looming larger, feeling like stones accumulating in a backpack she didn't want to carry. Uncertainty flooded her senses. "What if it's not enough?" Sarah murmured, her voice barely audible. "Then make it enough." Eric's gaze pierced through her doubt. "It's all about the next step you take. The courage to act is what will define you, not the whispers around you." She inhaled sharply. Was that courage, or simply a desire to escape her past? Yet even in that defining moment, she recognized a pulse of hope, a desire ignited by the possibility of being reborn. "What if I fail?" she countered, a tremor in her tone. "Then you learn and adapt," he replied, unwavering. "But sitting here, afraid to move, that's not an option." The commotion surged again, and Sarah felt an adrenaline rush coursing through her veins, fortifying her spirit. The allure of action called her. What if she stepped forth from the shadows of doubt? What if she roused the courage to sow seeds of her vision into reality? The social media influencer suddenly broke from the reporters, heading straight toward Sarah and Eric, an alluring smile lighting her face as the chaos receded behind. "Her, what are you two doing here?" the influencer asked, unfazed by the crowd. Her presence offered an opening. The air around Sarah vibrated with opportunity. Would she seize it? Would she reveal her ambitions, blending the worlds of social media and revitalization? The stakes rose dramatically, a challenging dance on the flywheel of her fears and aspirations. In that moment, she felt something shift within her, a tenuous thread of resolve weaving through her heart. "We're here to redefine what's possible," she declared, a firm note threading into her voice. The smile on the influencer's face widened, and in an unexpected twist, a new challenge loomed.
Then let's collaborate. Standing at a crossroads, Sarah weighed her rising excitement against the whispered doubts unfolding in her mind. Would this be a path toward her aspirations, or another diversion from her intent? With a deep breath, she squared her shoulders, ready to confront the turns ahead. The choices were swirling around her, each one a reflection of her identity and purpose. As the influencer's proposal hung in the air, Sarah felt the weight of her decision looming larger than life itself. Would she embrace the chaos and aim for something magnificent, or would she slip back into obscurity? The answer awaited her, starkly lit against the backdrop of uncertainty. The influencer's gaze remained fixed on Sarah, an enigmatic smile dancing on her lips. The crowd had receded, yet the pressure to respond was palpable. As Sarah met her eyes, the connections she'd once seen as fractures began knitting together. A surge of ambition coursed through her. "Collaborate?" Sarah echoed, her voice steadying. The word tasted foreign, yet it was invigorating, cradling hidden possibilities. "What does that look like?" "Let's merge our visions," the influencer replied, her enthusiasm bubbling over. "You have a unique concept. Trendy diners are where it's at, but adding your rustic charm would set it apart. I can showcase it to my followers, help craft a narrative." Sarah's mind raced. A chance, an actual chance to ride the rising wave of social media influence. It was draped in uncertainty, yet no option ever felt completely safe. "Are you serious? Your followers? They'd be all over my diner." "Absolutely. We create content that transcends mere dining. Events, stories, experiences. Think outside the box." She gestured animatedly, eyes sparkling with possibilities that made Sarah's heart race. But beneath the excitement lay a flicker of hesitation. What if this partnership was the bridge she needed, or just another pitfall disguised as opportunity? "I need to know my brand will be respected. My story is not just social media fluff, it's about authentic experience." "Of course, authenticity is key." The influencer's assurance was almost magnetic. "With the right strategy, we can show your story to the world. Imagine a video series that emphasizes your cooking techniques, your inspirations. We can create a theme that resonates." As the wheels of her mind turned, uncertainty began to morph into clarity. "And what do you seek in return?" The question slipped, a necessary scrutiny anchored beneath a bright exterior. "Just your passion and commitment. This is a partnership. Both parties need to invest in the vision." The influencer's tone conveyed promise mixed with challenge. It echoed the advice Eric had given, defining oneself through action and intent. Was Sarah ready to coalesce her identity into this collaboration? Her heart slapped with ambition, yet fear tightened its grip on her thoughts. "If we move forward, it has to reflect my values, my dedication to quality, no shortcuts." "Completely understood." The influencer's excitement radiated. "Let's launch a campaign that transforms this diner into an experiential haven. Trust me, we will make waves." Sarah stood there, swaying between worlds. The prospect of success loomed enticingly, yet she was aware of how quickly it could slip back into nightmare. She felt an internal battle arise, a clash between the comforting safety of her kitchen and the thrilling yet frightening horizon of exposure. What if it doesn't resonate? Sarah's voice dipped lower, almost drowned by the sound of her rising heartbeat. Then we pivot. The influencer's certainty offset the anxiety coursing through Sarah. "You won't know until you try. But if you start from your truth, I believe it will amplify everything you dream." There it was, the moment to either seize or retreat. Would she be the entrepreneur she aspired to be, or stay trapped in the confines of her fears? The murmurs around them had faded to a hushed undertone. Eric stood just a few steps away, his expression an encouraging beacon amidst the swirl of possibilities. Taking a deep breath, Sarah let the anticipation wash over her. "All right," she declared with newfound authority. "Let's do this. Let's redefine what's possible." Excitement blended with dread, a cocktail of potential bursting to be tasted. As details streamed into their conversation, Sarah began to envision her diner wrought from her vision, not merely a conventional eatery, but a culinary experience stitched into the fabric of modern palates. It was risky, terribly so, but the sense of agency ignited a fire within her that she'd long thought extinguished. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted again. Something visceral lurked on the periphery of her consciousness. Was this new partnership the real opportunity she craved, or would the enormity of expectation become a choking weight? "Hold on," Sarah interjected, sensing a split in her focus. "We need to discuss the timeline and the content strategy. I want to make sure everything flows." As they dived into planning, Sarah's resolve solidified. This was not just a partnership, it was a climb towards her true potential. The shadow of past disappointments began to recede, and a tentative belief emerged that perhaps she was capable of managing this new complexity. Yet just as enthusiasm built, she felt a nagging thought, a sense of impending challenge lurking in the background. Could she uphold her authenticity while navigating the unforgiving terrain of digital fame? The question lingered, heavy with consequence, as they continued their strategic conversation. Yet her internal dialogue was stirring, propelling her toward action. With every word exchanged, Sarah knew she was redefining more than her diner. She was reshaping her identity, stepping into the very narrative she had yearned to tell. But would she steer her course through unknown challenges without losing herself in the process? As excitement mingled with uncertainty, the next phase unfurled at her feet, one that could irrevocably alter her path and reveal deeper truths about the life she was eager to cultivate. Sarah spent the next few days enveloped in a whirlwind of preparations. She felt as though she were on the precipice of something monumental. A life-altering synergy was brewing between her culinary vision and the influencer's expansive reach. Yet, as she drafted potential content ideas, a sense of impending pressure pressed heavily against her chest. Would her story withstand the crucible of public scrutiny? Each proposal she sketched on paper reflected her genuine passion for food, a narrative woven deeply with her experiences and traditions. Yet, beneath that enthusiasm lurked a question that plagued her every action. Would the essence of her identity survive the transformation that fame demanded? The specter of failure peered over her shoulder, like a relentless shadow. She met Eric at their usual spot, the corner booth bathed in the soft glow of hanging lights. He studied her carefully, probing the surface of her radiant ambitions. "What's gotten into you?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. "You're glowing." "It's happening, Eric. I'm collaborating with a social media influencer." The excitement in her voice danced just above a whisper, as though she were afraid to utter it too loudly lest it disappear. "Hell yeah! That's incredible! But is there a but lurking somewhere?" he probed further, naturally attuned to her complexities. "I want to make sure I stay true to myself. It's easy to get lost in the noise. I've worked too hard to have my story watered down into a trend," Sarah confessed, battling the tremors of doubt tightening her grip on optimism. "Then don't let it. You've got the skill and the heart. Just remember why you started. Let that guide you." Eric's words resonated with her, igniting a flicker of confidence that had dimmed under the weight of her fears. Their conversation shifted toward strategies, how to engage her regular customers and attract new ones through this partnership. Sarah envisioned hosting unique events, themed culinary nights that would merge her rustic dishes with the influencer's modern flair. Yet, foundational to these plans was her commitment to her craft. The delicate balance of innovation and integrity was not something she was willing to compromise. In the days that followed, Sarah dove into this new endeavor, poring over video editing ideas, planning cooking segments that illustrated her journey, and exploring storytelling techniques that would undoubtedly connect with her audience. The influencer's excitement was infectious, yet Sarah harbored a growing realization that this collaboration might demand more from her than she was prepared to give. Her late nights became synonymous with introspection. On a particularly quiet evening, while scrolling through the influencer's posts, Sarah observed hundreds of comments that ranged from praise to harsh criticism. The platform she was about to step onto was a double-edged sword. It highlighted success, but also exposed vulnerabilities. Could she endure the harsh spotlight? The fear felt almost paralyzing, a stark reminder of past missteps that threatened to suffocate her emerging ambitions. As realization dawned, another voice stirred within her. This was the moment to confront that fear. What if she channeled it instead, transforming anxious energy into a driving force? She couldn't let the prospect of judgment deter her from exploring uncharted territory. To break free from complacency and weave her culinary journey into something larger. The night stretched into dawn. Ideas crystallized under the glow of her kitchen lights. Each thought reaffirmed her commitment to authenticity. Her values would not be swallowed by fleeting trends. Fueled by newfound resolve, Sarah framed her narrative not just as a business evolution, but as an extension of her inner self. When she awoke with the sun peeking through her window, an epiphany hit her with clarity. She was not just launching a campaign, she was igniting her path towards self-actualization. But woven into this clarity was a daunting truth. She would have to manage expectations and navigate potential pitfalls that came with the influencer's world. With anticipation bubbling now not just from collaboration, but from personal growth, Sarah pulled out her notebook. She wouldn't just navigate the unknown, she would seize it, determined to instill her essence within every digital frame and fleeting moment. In that instant, Sarah understood. Success would come not from the size of her audience, but from the depth of her authentic voice. Yet just then, as she scribbled ideas for her first video series, a notification pinged on her phone. A familiar name flashed on the screen. The influencer had messaged her, initiating a dialogue that marked the next pivotal surge in her journey. Would the invitation to deeper collaboration ignite or stifle her spirit? The question lingered ominously, leaving Sarah contemplating the unpredictable terrain ahead of her. The notification rattled Sarah from her focused thoughts, her heart racing as she opened the message. The influencer was suggesting a video collaboration that would showcase not only her culinary skills, but also her personal story. An intimate reveal of what shaped her into the chef she was today. "Hey, Sarah, I think it would be awesome for your followers to see the woman behind the dishes. Let's meet up to brainstorm ideas." The excitement of the proposal was palpable, yet an undertow of anxiety rippled through her. This was her chance to connect authentically with an audience, but it would also demand a level of vulnerability she was not accustomed to sharing publicly. What if her story wasn't compelling enough? What if she opened herself up only to be judged? Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself of Eric's advice, to remember why she started. She concluded that being open could ultimately expand her brand, transforming her passion into something deeply relatable. Still, the inherent risk weighed heavily in the air like an unsettled storm. In an effort to channel her unease, Sarah decided to focus on her core principles as a chef and storyteller. She brainstormed ideas that would pull from her heritage, recipes passed down through generations, and why they were meaningful. The idea of crafting content that didn't just serve to entertain, but to connect on a personal level was inching closer in her mind. The next morning, she prepared her favorite breakfast, a simple yet soulful dish that reminded her of home. As she cooked, the familiar scents wrapped around her like a comforting embrace. The act felt grounding amidst the chaos swirling within her. Each ingredient was another thread in her narrative. Plating the dish, she realized that food was not just about flavors, it was a bridge, a way to share her story. With renewed energy, Sarah gathered her notebooks and created a detailed outline of what she wanted to convey. The video would not be just a showcase of culinary skills, but a glimpse into her life, her struggles, her triumphs, and what it meant to find her own voice in a noisy world. As she wrote, it became clear that the journey wasn't about impressing others, it was about authenticity and connection. To ensure her vision remained intact, she decided to assert her needs and boundaries in her collaboration with the influencer. The thought of facing them bristled with uncertainty, yet there was a burgeoning resolve rooting itself deep in her gut. She would draft an email outlining her vision and also her desire for clear communication moving forward. She needed this partnership to feel right, to support her journey instead of compromising it. Sending the email was an act of courage, but she felt a weight lift from her shoulders as she clicked send. She watched the screen for a moment, wondering how it would be received, hoping for comprehension and support. Days passed like a blur. Sarah threw herself into preparing for the collaboration. The influencer finally responded with enthusiasm, but also suggestions that leaned towards the sensationalized. Each proposal crossed her inbox felt further away from the authenticity she yearned to maintain. She found herself at a critical juncture, becoming what the influencer envisioned or holding steadfast to her identity. The crossroads loomed large and fear gripped her. Would she choose the potential fame or stay true to herself? If the influencer continued to push for a direction she wasn't comfortable with, would she risk losing everything she valued? As she stared blankly at the screen, world-renowned influencers attracting millions were just one click away, and the questions surfaced relentlessly. How far was she willing to go to fit in? What was the cost of popularity versus authenticity? With a grim sense of determination, Sarah resolved to confront this conflict head-on. She knew that to navigate this journey effectively, she would have to engage in a frank dialogue with the influencer about her vision, expectations, and the crossroads they faced together. Little did she know, those words would not only test her professional boundaries, but also challenge her deeply personal beliefs as she prepared to stand her ground. The moment had come. Would she execute her vision or risk unraveling in the face of temptation? The sun streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating Sarah's workspace as she paced back and forth. She felt like a tightrope walker, teetering precariously between ambition and authenticity. The influencer's proposals swam in her mind, each suggestion a ripple in the clarity of her vision. She grabbed a handful of fresh basil, its scent steeping in the air, grounding her momentarily. These moments of peace nestled between her thoughts of doubt were fleeting but vital. What she wanted was a glimpse into her own identity, illuminated through the lens of her cooking, a journey enriched by her family's recipes and memories. But that essence felt fragile against the demand for sensationalism. Sinking into a chair at her table, she contemplated the implications of each decision. Could she really communicate her story the way she envisioned, without losing her essence to flashy edits and exaggerated performances? Dialing the influencer's number was daunting, yet she found herself forced into a dance of preparation. She outlined key points in her mind, creating a mental script to stave off the rising tide of anxiety threatening to engulf her. What would it feel like to assert her vision, to say no if she needed to? Each thought was a double-edged sword, striking with confidence while simultaneously cutting through her insecurities. As the phone rang, Sarah reminded herself that she had something valuable to offer: her story, her passion, and the authenticity she had cultivated. The call connected with a familiar, buoyant voice. "Hey, Sarah, I've been thinking about our plans. We could really amp this up for your audience." "Hi, yes, I've been looking over your ideas. I wanted to discuss how we can weave my story into it," she began, her voice steady despite surging nerves. "Absolutely. The more drama, the better, right?" The influencer laughed, but Sarah felt the knot in her stomach tighten. This was what she had feared, a deeper dive into sincerity rather than sincerity. "That's where I need to pause," Sarah interrupted, feeling a rush of courage. "I appreciate the energy, but I want to keep the focus on authenticity. I want my recipes and my life story to shine through without the extra frills." There was a silence on the other end of the line, thick like freshly rolled dough waiting to be baked. The influencer finally responded, a hint of surprise lacing their tone. "I see. But this is all about catching attention, right? Sometimes a little flash makes the story more appealing." Sarah's heart raced. This was the moment. Would she yield to pressure or forge a path that felt right?
Weighing her options, she spoke firmly. "I understand that, but my audience values authenticity. I want to connect, not just entertain. It should feel like a celebration of what I love, not a performance." She could sense the shifting dynamics as she voiced her needs, the storm within now simmering into a flowing river of clarity. The response came slowly. "Okay, I hear you. Let's figure out how to blend both approaches. It's crucial for this to resonate for you." Reassurance washed over her, yet the conversation left an open wound of uncertainty. While it validated her instincts, it also echoed the looming challenge of continuous negotiation. Every moment spent standing her ground felt like a small victory that steeped her loins with newfound strength. Yet the question lingered. Would her authenticity interest an audience or drive them away? Just as she contemplated this, the call ended with tentative agreements floating between them. Yet the adrenaline of a battle fought stirred her deeply. Days spent fine-tuning every detail felt rich with meaning as she prepared for the upcoming filming, yet anxiety bubbled beneath the surface. She was straddling two worlds, the allure of expansion and the preservation of self. On the eve of the video shoot, Sarah found herself staring into the mirror, confronting her reflection. Who was she poised to present to the world? The reliable chef holding tightly to tradition, or the flavor-packed innovator eager to burst forth? The juxtaposition unsettled her. A knock on the door broke her reverie. It was Eric, ready for their strategy session. Steeling herself, she opened the door, but a sudden twist of fate interrupted her carefully constructed facade. What if the conversation with Eric revealed an unexpected critique that challenged her core intentions? As they began to discuss, the absence of clarity shadowed everything. Would today bring clarity, or would it further entangle her vision in uncertainty? As Sarah welcomed Eric inside, she could feel the tension brewing in the air like a storm about to break. The vibrant colors of her kitchen, with its fresh produce and the hum of her culinary tools, seemed to contrast sharply with the worried thoughts swirling in her mind. Eric, her friend and professional advisor, settled at the dining table, papers strewn around like a chaotic reflection of her own internal struggle. "So, how are you feeling about tomorrow?" Eric asked, his gaze piercing yet sincere. "I'm feeling prepared," she said, her voice steady but betraying only the slightest quiver. "But also a bit overwhelmed. I want to make a statement about authenticity. But is that enough?" Her hand curled around a fork, tapping it nervously against the table. "Authenticity is powerful, Sarah," Eric replied, leaning forward, jazzed by her passion. "But you also know that audience engagement is key in this industry. How do you plan to balance that?" The question hung there, echoing in the kitchen's serene ambiance. She shuffled her thoughts, the reminders of the recent phone call washing over her. Could her vision withstand the test of public scrutiny? She clenched her jaw, unwilling to let doubt govern her answer. "By making sure every single element I showcase has meaning," she finally asserted. "If I present my family recipes and their stories, people will connect with them. It's about more than just the food. It's about heritage." Eric nodded, but the furrow in his brow indicated he still felt something was missing. "That's a great foundation, but how will you capture that visually? Live cooking can sometimes distract from the deeper story. Have you thought about how to keep it genuine yet engaging?" His feedback stung.
In trying to remain resilient, she felt as if she was being dissected rather than understood. Could she truly encapsulate her vision without bending to expectations? "I want the focus to be on the connections," Sarah pushed back, defensive, "not on gimmicks." The weight of her ambition bore down on her, and she realized these conversations were as tests of her character as they were strategic planning sessions. Here was her true test, one that precipitated her growth, confronting the layers of doubt she had previously buried. Maybe the visuals don't need to be flashy, she contemplated aloud, her mind sparking with new ideas. What if I focus on the intimacy of the cooking process, close shots, personal touches, letting the story naturally unfold as I cook? It could show the love and authenticity behind each dish without the need for performance. "Now you're talking," Eric encouraged. The shift in his demeanor reassured her, as if she were pulling the threads of her vision into focus. "You might even want to incorporate some narrative elements too. Your voiceover, guiding the audience through your memories tied to each recipe, could bridge both authenticity and engagement." The vision began crystallizing in her mind, layered and rich with personal anecdotes. But as epiphanies often come, another wave of anxiety followed. Was that enough to make her stand out in an industry rife with competition? What if her story didn't resonate? Across the table, she noticed Eric's expression darken slightly, and the keen awareness returned. "What's on your mind?" she prodded, feeling the familiar unease creep back in. "There's something I feel I need to say. While authenticity is crucial, the market is always shifting. You might reach a point where staying true to yourself feels like an uphill battle. Be ready to adapt without compromising your core values," he cautioned, a sincerity underlying his words. Sarah swallowed hard. The reality hung like a dark cloud. Could she navigate the tightrope of authenticity and commercial demand? "In the end, if I lose myself, what's the point?" she replied, softly, more to herself than to anyone else. With a deep breath, she took a moment to collect her thoughts, shifting her focus back to what truly mattered. The voice of her grandmother echoed in her ear, a reminder of her culinary lineage. Her stories were rooted in love, hope, and resilience. Perhaps this could be her turning point, the moment she could firmly claim her identity amid the chaos. But was she prepared for the inherent volatility of such a journey? As she and Eric continued their dialogue, an overwhelming urge to discover the full scope of her potential ignited within her. Balancing passion with pragmatism, Sarah felt instincts sparking an idea that needed exploration. But would she muster the bravery to fully embrace both her identity and the uncertainty that came with it? "Let's dive deeper into this tomorrow," she proposed, her heart racing with newfound determination. The challenge would lie not just in the production, but in how she would present herself to the world. The moment of truth arrived as she prepared to take that leap of faith. Would she emerge empowered or estranged from her vision? The next day loomed like a double-edged sword, forcing her to confront the reality of her choices, or confront a truth that could leave her questioning everything she had worked so hard to build. Would she stay true in front of the camera, or would the lights dim on her authenticity? The morning light poured through the kitchen window, illuminating the remnants of last night's conversation. Sarah felt the weight of both the day ahead and her unsteady resolve. Little did she know that a simple decision made before the sun had fully risen would chart the course of her journey. As she stood at the counter, chopping vegetables for a fresh salad, the rhythmic motion provided a strange comfort. Each slice was a small reminder of her lineage, the cherished recipes that had been passed down, and the stories that clung to each ingredient. Portions of her past stirred within her, pushing aside her rising anxiety. Yet a new, unforgiving question crept in. Would these memories truly resonate in front of an audience she could not see? "Today I need to focus," she whispered to herself, determination flickering like a candle flame. But the image of an audience filled with skeptical faces lingered at the edges of her mind, casting shadows on her preparations. Tension knotted in her stomach as she thought of how quickly she could drown in the expectations of others. If she was to present herself authentically, she had to be raw and real, but what if that wasn't enough? The aroma of sautéing garlic filled the air, rekindling memories of evenings spent in her grandmother's kitchen. Comfort blended with a wave of melancholy. Was she truly gone, she thought, as tears threatened to spill? Grief was tricky, especially when mixed with ambition. Suddenly she felt an urgency to gather her thoughts. Rushing to her desk, she started scribbling down ideas for the presentation, each one infused with fragments of her spirit. But as she jotted down her plans, a creeping doubt slithered into her consciousness. What if it fell flat? What if she couldn't convey the depth that her family history carried? The contrast between her culinary mission and a potentially critical audience left her reeling. Sarah slammed her pen down. This constant battle against self-doubt was exhausting. She paused, taking a deep breath, and stared at the list. It felt misleading to mold herself into some idealized version of a chef. Sure, she'd met the glossy magazine standards, gracing the covers of culinary publications, but forcing herself into that box felt suffocating. Why couldn't I just be me? She questioned the empty room. But the voice she sought to impress hadn't made space for vulnerability. Despite her desire to maintain authenticity, the stakes demanded that she put on her professional armor. Could she weave her truth through the chaotic threads of external judgment? Catching her reflection in the window, she glimpsed a woman poised at the precipice of a new chapter. The realization hit her like a thunderclap. The authenticity that had initially grounded her was evolving into a challenge of vulnerability. It dawned on her that vulnerability could be her secret weapon. She envisioned the scene unfolding, her warm smile visible just above the cutting board, along with the fingerprints of flour on her apron. This, she thought, is the essence of who I am. Yet this was more than an idea. It was a revelation that could separate her from the sea of culinary creators. But what if vulnerability opened her up to judgment instead of acceptance? Determined to seize the moment, she reached for her phone, thumb hovering over her contacts. The fear of sharing her untold story threatened to hold her back. But if she didn't reach out now, she risked losing the small ember of courage she had just ignited. With a deep breath, she dialed Eric's number. "I need to plan a strategy, one that embraces both vulnerability and authenticity," she declared upon his greeting. "Let's change the narrative. I don't want to hide behind flashy visuals. I want depth and connection." "Now we're getting somewhere," he replied with enthusiasm. "Let's map out exactly how you can frame your experience. But be ready to open up. It's a risk, but that's the nature of your art." As they spoke, their conversation electrified her, and she felt herself lean into the uncertain. Perhaps she could embrace her heritage as a bridge to her future instead of a shackle to her past. This mindset shift felt monumental, though she knew the road ahead would be riddled with personal conflict. The clock ticked steadily, reminding her of how little time remained. "What have I got to lose?" she thought, propelled by a burgeoning confidence. And as her plans fell into place, she sensed what was coming. Tomorrow would be a stage not just for her culinary skills, but a platform for her to reclaim her narrative. She pondered, what if leading with honesty became the cornerstone of my presentation? Her heart raced at the thought. But uncertainty loomed. Could she truly be ready to stand in front of her peers and reveal her heart? The challenge brewed like a storm, waiting for the moment of revelation. As the afternoon sun dipped lower in the sky, Sarah braced herself. Tomorrow could either bring liberation or expose her vulnerabilities in ways she wasn't prepared for. The stakes had never felt higher. And just as she hung up the phone, her thoughts seizing the air around her, a frantic message pinged on her phone, instantly shattering the fragile peace she'd just built. With it came a jarring question. Who was trying to undermine her vision now? Would she find the strength to reclaim her story, or would she risk losing it to the clutches of doubt and sabotage? Early the next day, Sarah awoke with the weight of impending decisions pressing on her chest. Yet a newfound fire flickered within her. As the sun crept into her kitchen, illuminating her workspace, she felt reminded that today was not just about revealing her culinary skills, but about unveiling herself, her story, her fears, and finally her authentic vision to the world. She spent the morning rushing to transform her concepts into tangible materials. Notes sprawled across the table as she honed each recipe into a heartfelt narrative. The process of cooking became meditative, a continuation of her family's legacy woven into her modern aspirations. This is how I reclaim my power, she thought, the spices and color pooling in beautiful contrast against her insecurities. Each dish she created was a stepping stone toward the freedom she yearned to embrace. When it was time to film, Sarah dressed carefully, opting for an apron that bore the stains of countless family meals. As she looked in the mirror, she didn't see the woman uncertain of her place in this industry. She saw a vibrant chef who dared to step out from her father's shadow and into a light of her own making. Standing tall, her confidence bolstered by clarity, she felt ready. Arriving on set, Sarah was met with an array of lights and cameras and the buzz of crew members whispering in pre-shoot excitement. Suddenly, the anxiety crept back. A familiar sensation, a gnawing pit in her stomach, amplified by the pressing eyes of the production team. But then she thought back to the essence of what she wanted to share. This was not a performance. This was her truth. As filming began, Sarah followed her outline, but rather than merely reciting the script, she spoke from the heart. She shared the stories behind each recipe, memories of her grandmother's laughter amid their kitchen, and how every flavor had been infused with love and resilience. Her words flowed naturally and carved deeper connections with the audience she had imagined before her. Slowly, Sarah realized she could indeed translate her authentic self onto this platform. But then, during one particularly vulnerable moment, something unexpected happened. A tremor laced her voice as she spoke about the too recent loss of her father, a shadow lurking just at the periphery of her mental landscape. I know he would be proud. This is
For him and for my daughter. Stepping back into her story, she allowed emotion to wash over her without letting it cloud her vision. Whether vulnerability struck a chord or risked exposure, she had decided it was worthwhile for the sake of authenticity. With every segment they filmed, she began to witness transformation, not only within her kitchen, but within herself. The crew responded to her genuineness. Their smiles encouraged her, reaffirming her belief that authenticity could resonate even in this commercial arena. Each dish cooked was more than just food. It was a bid to honor her heritage and her father's legacy, while manifesting her aspirations for the diner to thrive anew. After hours of recording, Sarah felt exhilarated, her insecurities having dissolved in the buoyancy of genuine expression. As they wrapped, she received feedback that validated her experience. "This authenticity is refreshing," the producer remarked, a motivational spark encouraging her to venture forth. Yet amidst the congratulatory atmosphere, a nagging thought echoed within her. Had she successfully translated her true self onto such a vast platform without compromising? She reminded herself that both success and growth emerge from taking risks. This was the first step upon her newfound path. Several weeks later, with the influencer's collaboration well underway,
Sarah's rejuvenated vision for the diner began to gain traction. The initial video, showcasing raw, real cooking and heartfelt stories, was received with overwhelming positivity. Engagement surged, and suddenly Sarah found herself at the forefront of lively discussions within the culinary community. Outside the realm of fleeting fame and simplified trends, she managed to build a dedicated audience who resonated with her complexities. The mother, the chef, the woman reclaiming her heritage. Together, they explored themes beyond just cooking, but rather connected through deeply authentic shared experiences. The fears that had once lodged themselves in her throat began to shift, transforming into pride. Her brave venture into uncharted territory had borne fruit. When Sarah received a request for a feature in a prominent cooking magazine, a platform she had longed for since her early days in the diner, she felt anticipation blossom within her. This recognition was not just for her culinary skills, but for her heartfelt storytelling and commitment to authenticity. Standing in her kitchen with flour dusting the air like a memory, Sarah realized she had evolved beyond what she had ever imagined. She conquered the fear that once held her hostage. "I proved that I could balance authenticity with ambition," she whispered to herself with conviction. Now it felt clear. The diner wasn't merely a building with history, but a canvas painted in love and creativity, ready to redefine what it meant to be a part of the culinary landscape. Real fulfillment ignited in the knowledge that she could embrace her truth without compromise. As she took a moment to inhale the aroma of cooking, pride swelled within her, not the kind that abandoned humility, but one rooted in deep satisfaction. The challenges that had plagued her became once more not weights, but stepping stones, reminders
of growth and lessons learned. She stood firm, poised to stake her place in not only the culinary scene, but in the narrative of her own life. Emboldened and aligned with her authentic self, Sarah was ready for the next chapter. What awaited were not just accolades, but connections that nurtured her spirit. She realized her journey toward personal achievement was marked not by the absence of fear, but rather by her triumph over it. And as she prepared to share her story, heart racing with anticipation, there was an undeniable resolve reverberating deep within her. This was only the beginning. Her legacy would echo not solely through her recipes, but through the authentic voice she dared to proclaim as her own, a voice empowered by resilience and marked by growth. This is where her story transformed, the moment she chose to be both the chef and the storyteller, embracing the art of vulnerability to rise unapologetically into her greatness. Now, as true fans of personal overcoming stories, this is your moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire. Leave a like now to help feed the algorithm and let others discover this gripping journey. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's transformation. Share how her story resonates with you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion. You need to be part of this life's journey as it unfolds.